So go ahead when you're ready, Rachel.
Hello, everyone. So yeah, I'm going to do 3 poems, and they're all on theme. So this is your warning for triggers, but this whole space is here so that we break silence and speak. So although I hardly ever share these poems when I perform, if there's ever a time, it's here. So I really hope that we can hold this space together, and if anyone's affected, including myself, this is your invitation to breathe and to let go of that holding breath and to find space afterwards if you need it. Tiger Lily. He said that the lily didn't toil to be. It took nothing. And I asked how he could possibly know what it took to unfurl those arms and harden a bubbling gut. Sometimes, just sometimes, men steal the sun and replace it with a furnace and ask us why we're burning. But the lily, tender and outraged, still rose, a tiger roaring through pollinated, polluted earth in spring. Thank you. Me too. I need to write a quiet note to all the humans who can't find solace in hashtags, who can still barely find the words. Friend, you can't join a movement if you can't move. Some pain remains frozen regardless of what trends. Healing does not heed a time frame. Maybe today, the only thing that you can declare timidly is that you're still here. Me too. Thank you. This one, I never perform, and I'm in a further place in my healing journey than when I wrote it, but it's still a part of me, and I think it's important to share it somewhere. So this is me like holding myself and like being honest that I'm going to be vulnerable, and I want to do that. And I thank all of you for coming here and showing up, because that is you being vulnerable too. Oh yeah, I'm gonna try something so I'm not so alone. When I gesture to you, could you please say the words, "You're fine"? We're going to try it now together, okay? Yeah, it's really good, thank you. How to make a murderer. He cried. I finished work in Charing Cross, an event management job, the smallest amount of power to go to anyone's head. But it bought me books, I was too ill to read, and cardigans. And I loved the VIP lanyard and writing on a clipboard and giving out free drinks to people twice my age, like Santa Claus, but with cheap vodka. One night, I actually tweeted #tragic. It was a wonderful fall from magic. It was everything I would have hated, but chose not to. We wanted to go to heaven, which meant tinny music, sticky floors, and gay white men calling me gorgeous, and just like Rihanna, with clicking tongues that made me feel uneasy and unwelcome. But the world was empty, and I wanted to dance till I was dizzy. Some of us were turned away. There was no room at the inn for a queer black girl without a shiny smile. I went to get the 27 bus, but I needed to piss, and it took an hour to get back to Mum's, so I found a passage between two buildings and a doorway. And I did that classy crouch. If you don't have a penis, you can't just whip it out. And when I was done, he called out to me from the main street and asked if I was all right. I pulled up my tights and called out that, of course, I'm fine. He got closer, and I mean, I wasn't fine. I had to go home alone, and it was cold, and I was tired. But I didn't need help. I'm fine, thank you. Darling, I couldn't hear what he was saying. It's all right. His body blocked out the sound. His accent was heavy. Don't worry, darling. His breath was dense. Don't cry. His skin was poison. It'll be all right. It already was. It was the wind holding its breath. It was dry, swallowing death. It was sweaty bread. It was rotting wood. It was molding marrow. It was the never-ending February. My friends danced dizzy in heaven. The devil dragged me to hell. Don't cry. He cried. And I met the only person I could have killed. He tore a gash through my body. Don't cry. And as I crumbled on the floor, please don't cry, darling. He grasped at my pieces for absolution. No, he begged me. Don't cry. That year, I lost too much weight, and people told me I was in great shape. Well, I spent months jumping into mirrors because the shards felt safer than flesh. We tell ourselves a lot of lies. I remember that summer when I first told my dear friend Freddie about that night, and don't cry, I said, I'm fine, Freds, and I still have a good heart. But if I could, I would find a gun and aim it at his head. I would hesitate, wait, and pull the trigger once. Because then I'm fine. I would not be the only one who had died. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Rachel. I think we can all agree that that was amazing and a fantastic introduction to this panel more generally, which is on healing and the way that we survive. We all know that healing is messy, and it might not be what we are told it looks like in contemporary culture around us. It's complex and it's nuanced, and that's what we're all going to have a conversation about today. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you all for being here as well. I know there's lots of wonderful events on today, so we're all really glad that you could be here with us. And also a quick thank you just to the crew and the staff who've organised all of this, because it's been quite a feat to organise everything, and yeah, it's all going wonderfully. Another of couple housekeeping things, I just want people to know that if it ever feels too much in this space, you're free to leave, you're free to come back, the doors are open for you, and it's totally up to you. Also, I know that these events can be really tiring and often quite exhausting, so if anyone wants to relax, maybe even lie down or sit however you want to, then please do. And so with that, I'll just do a brief introduction to myself, and then I'll introduce each of our wonderful panellists. My name's Catriona Morton. I'm the author of The Way We Survive, Notes on Rape Culture, which was published this year. I'm also the producer and host of the BBC Sounds podcast, After Surviving Sexual Assault, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Survivors publication platform online called Life Continues After. I was really happy and honoured to be invited to chair this. The concept of healing has been one that's had a lot of tension for me over the years, and especially over all my work. I think it's very complex, and especially in the way we're told in contemporary culture, especially that there's a time frame and things like that on healing. That's something I've been grappling with for quite a while. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here with all these wonderful people to discuss the concept of healing and what it means to each of us. So without further ado, I'm going to briefly introduce them, but then they're also going to introduce themselves in their own terms as well. So beside me, and who you've just met, is Rachel Nwokoro, who is a poet, a survivor, and founder of Black Minds. Next to them is activist and speaker Sabah Choudrey. Next to them is artist and survivor Tashmia Owen. And next to them is Davina Dobbs, who's a therapist. So if you'll all join me in giving a round of applause to these wonderful people. Cool. So, like I said, I'll just let them introduce themselves and what they do as well and why they're here. So first off, Rachel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Nwokoro. I am a multidisciplinary storyteller, which means that I tell stories in lots of different ways. I'm also an arts activist. I use arts to make the world better in many different ways. I am also a creative healer and a mystic, so I spend my life trying to connect to my soul and other people's souls and trying to make the world a better place. I have recently founded the organization Black Mind, which is an arts as activism organization. And we've recently produced a zine called Bad Mind that has commissioned a number of Black artists over lockdown to make pieces that respond to mental health, well-being, justice, and joy, all things that I think are essential to everyone being able to look after their well-being. And I also read poetry from my own book just now called Little You. And I really am dedicated to creativity being accessible as a means for healing and expression of the unseen, the shadow that we all feel and very often are taught to avoid. I think creative spaces and healing art spaces are really essential, which I'll talk about later. But yeah, that's arts and health is my vibe, and justice.
Thank you. And Sabah?
Thank you. And thank you to everyone for just coming and inviting me here into this amazing panel of speakers. I've just picked up my book, my Bad Mind. I can't wait to read it. So my name is Sabah. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. And I've been working with trans young people for about 7 years now. Currently, I manage a trans youth service with gender intelligence. I'm training to be a psychotherapist. So I'm a volunteer counselor with mostly people of color communities. I am what I call a reluctant activist because I don't always want to do that stuff I want to do, you know. And I do a lot of public speaking and writing about all things related to identity, really. So faith, gender, queerness, sexuality, masculinity, but mostly I like to look at power and privilege. And I'm really excited because I just got the author copy of my book, which is coming out in January 21st. Thanks. Not only is it a gorgeous color, it's actually going to be really awesome inside. It's supporting trans people of color, how to make your practice inclusive, and it does what it says on the tin, really. If you can't wait until then, there's also some little free guides of a smaller, cuter resource I published in 2016. They're free. It's available to download online as a PDF, and there's some copies by the Feminist Bookshop in the corner there. So do pick one up. It'd be really nice if you did. What else about me? Oh, I foster cats as well. That's something, a very important part of my identity. I take it very seriously. I think that's me. Thanks.
Cool, thank you. And Tashmia?
Oh, God, okay. Hi, I'm Tashmia. I'm a writer and an artist. My work tends to be around interrogating what it is to be a woman of colour in Britain today. I am also probably, as you say, a reluctant activist. I had a running column with Galdem magazine over the past couple of years because I'm coming out of breast cancer treatment. And then I've now fallen into this because of taking from your book. I'm in the aftermath of my most recent sexual assault, and I'm just coming out of the other side of the criminal investigation. And so today I'm here speaking about that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And then finally, Davina.
Yep, I'm absolutely honoured to either be on this panel and to be here today. I have my own private practice working with women of colour who have mainly gone through sexual violence or sexual assault, based on my own experiences as a child as well as an adult. So I think it's very important to have that lived experience as well as that knowledge to help and support women that sometimes their voice is not heard or not believed or not acknowledged. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Great. So now we'll just go into the actual discussion. Afterwards, we will have some time with an audience Q&A. But first off, quite an intense question to begin with, just getting straight into it, and this is open for all of you to answer as well. Whether you think that healing from sexual violence or gender-based violence more generally is possible. Anyone can jump in, or I can ask someone.
My answer is yes. It has to be yes for me because I'm in it, I'm on a healing journey, and I think I know that I'm in a different place to my journey than I was, and that is another beautiful thing about art or journaling or anything that is able to give you a space to express, because when it gets lost in the unseen, in your subconscious, you can't really track your progress, because when you go back to that place, you're there. But on the everyday, things can really, with time and support and a lot of structures that are needed to be better, I have experienced healing to be possible. And I have to advocate for that, because I think the opposite message is what is propagated by society, that, there's some indelible, immovable mark on you that cannot, you become the shamed ones. And it makes it so that, like, for me, I don't even want to, I'm very uncomfortable being seen right now, which is like the reluctant activist thing is like, I have to be here in my spirit in order to fight for my right to be alive, but being able to embrace my experience in terms of it being truth, you know, and find a way to be a contradiction and still feel able to have the right to exist in this world, like have a right to experience love regardless of whether you can feel it in yourself. Like, you still deserve respect, you still deserve space. This space being here is, as well, is another reason why I believe, if not in a now idea of healing, I believe in a future of like collective healing, being de-individualized. That's what makes it less sustainable for me, is the onus on the self, as if we aren't all a part of each other. Like, as if us all, like, the most erased of us, which I will say for me in this arena is, as a black woman, like, I do not identify as a woman of color personally, although I'm in solidarity with women of color. I am a black woman because I feel that even that identity and the specific struggles within that identity in Britain are homogenized, and I feel the effect of being here and having to search for people that look like me, and I feel the effect of like the barriers to healing, but we're having dialogue about these things, and I feel more resonance about our sameness that will make it easier for us to talk about our difference than it has been for ancestors and people before us, I think. Yeah, I have hope.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was great. Does anyone else want to speak to that or respond?
Yeah, everyone's looking at me. I think healing is a very personal journey, and I think at times we can attach definitions of what healing should look like. But I think healing is a personal thing that sometimes we have to sit down with ourselves and ask what healing is. Some, it may be just knowing it ain't their fault. Some may be actually, I can leave my house and feel safe. So, but I do feel healing is possible. I believe in healing as my own self, and I think being a therapist and seeing people's different journeys of healing, that somehow, sometimes we ourselves don't know that we're healing, and it's just a moment. So I think, yeah, healing is definitely possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love the enthusiasm you had when you first answered. It was like, yes, it has to be possible. Like, I believe it does too, because I believe that we are healed people. We are healing communities, and we've just created these violent systems and oppressive systems. And I say we because I'm also complicit, right? So it is possible, and so that means for me that they're temporary. If I said I didn't believe it was possible, then I would be accepting that this is life and this is the society we live in. So absolutely, it's possible. And I think, actually, I was thinking, I don't know if I would classify my kind of work as healing. Creating these spaces for trans young people where they can just have joy, express themselves, feel nourished, explore their identities, and have fun and feel liberated. I think, I guess some healing does happen along the way, but I think it's just that those spaces are showing them a world where, like, that violence doesn't exist, and there's a possibility and hope, exactly what you say. So, yeah, I think, I've just lost my thought into this beautiful little trans utopia of young people.
No, it's beautiful.
I think it's possible, but it's difficult because it means that I have to acknowledge that there is so much violence and there is so much hurt, and like what I've experienced is violence, because I wouldn't call myself a survivor of sexual violence. However, I have experienced harm, and also part of my own kind of journey is realizing how much I've internalized of like victim blaming and just like, well, what did I expect as a trans, gender non-conforming brown body in this space, or kind of just happens, and it'd be just so tiring to kind of really see this, because then I'd have to heal from it, and that feels really difficult sometimes. Yeah, I felt that sigh. Yeah, but But I think that's why we need those spaces, and then we need people who are on our side as well to hold that space for us and to gently show us and, you know, say, actually, this isn't okay, and you deserve to be loved, and this is what loving looks like, and you deserve to be healed, and this is what healing looks like as well.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Do you want to finish on this question then?
All right, yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I do think healing is possible. I question what healing is, and what that journey or process is. I don't believe in the finality. I don't think there's an end goal. I don't think that there's going to be a day that I wake up and I think I'm healed and I'm done, because I think, as you've both said already, the systems that we live in are violent. The world we live in is violent. It, at the moment, was created that way for certain things. There's power, control. Whilst we're still living in a world that is like that, it will repeat itself. These cycles will repeat themselves. I think in terms of sexual violence, there is also the unfortunate fact that we can never guarantee that that will be our one and only time. So those of us who may have experienced childhood sexual abuse have a process that we have to go through to heal or move on from that, to have an identity separate from that. Then if, say in my case, you end up in an abusive relationship, there is again, after that, a process that has to happen. And then last year, a stranger and somebody who I thought was a friend, again, it was a new process. And each time it's like there's a little hook that goes along, and it's sort of, sometimes you feel okay, but sometimes it just hooks on and it brings little bits unexpectedly that crop up. And you have to deal with those all over again. So I think it's a constant process, and it's, as you said, messy. There are good days, there are good moments, there are good years, but it's constant. We have to unlearn things. We have to unlearn a lot of things that we've internalized and we've learned since we were children.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really like, well, not like, but I think it's useful, the metaphor that you say about hooks, especially for people that have experienced multiple abuses across their life. It's quite a interesting way of talking about it and visualizing it, right? Mm-hmm. That it's going to crop up again throughout, and whenever anything else might happen, as it, like you said, unfortunately, that's a normal thing in our society for it to happen. Constantly it shouldn't be, but it is a reality for many of us. So thank you for that. So a few of you have already alluded to it in the way, in your answers so far, but the next question is about how you think that healing from sexual violence or gender-based violence is actually viewed in wider contemporary society. So whether that's different.
Could you say that again?
Yeah, of course. So so it's how you think that healing from sexual violence or gender-based violence is viewed in society widely. So whether that's with stereotypes or representations that maybe we see in the media. So that's the first part of the question.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Yeah. Energetically, you know, if I was to look at me being someone that's experienced repeated violence, if I was to see what the collective image is, it's, you know, a vulnerable white woman alone walking like down a street, and then some cloaked stranger, you know, that doesn't even exist, some demon stranger, you know, is like, it's a caricature, is what I think, which allows a niche caricature that allows society not to address the everyday violence and normality of it. It's a story, you know, it's a story that we're told that I feel, is like a cautionary tale that is like also, because it exists as an archetype, story illusion, is like oppressive. It's like, learn from this tale, like be a good girl, like stay at home, or it's something that you should know and therefore have learned. It's like something if you've all heard at a younger age at some point that like someone's gonna get you in some way, and the one thing that would never be said but is the worst nightmare of any parent or any guardian is like they'll get raped. And the thing is that that worst nightmare in my mind, as I'm delving into this unseen, is not around, well, for me in terms of the society, is not so much around that person's experience, because we demonize their distress. It's around the stain on like the reputation, or it having happened, you know, and having to deal, how other people instantly go on like how to deal with the comprehension of it being involved in our universe. And because I think it becomes so unfathomable, it's relegated to the shadows. And so I notice a very visible discomfort by anyone that has proximity to someone that is a survivor. I have CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, so I've experienced repeated traumas from a childhood, and I have noticed, the difficulty with the people closest to me still to be able to be equipped to handle something that is in front of their eyes, because the way it manifests in the everyday is in the hooks. It's in the way it keeps coming back. It's like the triggers. It's the unseen, and we don't have the structures or the language or the people to facilitate, and it shouldn't be so much the onus of the survivors in those moments to be able to translate, I'm sorry, this is what's happening to me right now, and here's my kit, and we're already on that journey, and this is why we're going to talk about it, maybe, you know, is why I talk about the collective, and that interconnectivity is like us working on this together, knowing that it liberates, it being an ongoing journey, maybe for up to the next lifetime, for us to create, to be able to imagine another world where rape is not a given, you know, and where we are able to accommodate the emotions, the wounds, the legacy of what's already happened, if it keeps coming up. Because what I notice is that whenever people try to you know, are distressed, you know, especially survivors of sexual violence, it makes, it's spun in a way that is palatable, but it's not necessarily seen in its ugliness. It's not seen in its not being able to wash. It's not being seen as it's not being able to calm. It's not being described in the way, in the dirt, the ugliness that is like something that you didn't choose affects your whole life, and therefore everyone around you like a bomb. But because of the repressive nature of Britain as well, in terms of just talking about fucking sex in of itself, it not being sex, it being in that energy center. Let's be real, it's in the energy center of that intimacy. It's like, it's easier, I feel, to put survivors in that same dark as perpetrators and abusers. That's how you get treated by the police, by the courts, and by the media. Even in death, you're desecrated. And that's the heartbreaking thing. And I really feel as well, that's where I'll stop for now. Thanks.
Thank you. No, thank you for that. And I think that sort of leads on to the second part of that question, which is about whether our culture currently understands the inherent complexity of surviving from sexual violence or other gender-based violences. I don't know if anyone else would like to respond to that.
Very first question
first
again,
part?
please.
Yeah, of
Sorry, I
course.
just was so caught up in listening to you that I moved on somewhere else.
That's okay, yeah. So that first part was, how do you think that healing from sexual violence is viewed in society? So which stereotypes or representations are shown to us?
Well, I suppose that also connects with the stereotypes around what a victim is, what the perfect victim is, what an imperfect victim is, which is in society in terms of the media, in terms of the police, the CPS. If you were walking home at night, why were you walking home at night on your own? Did you have a drink? Why did you have a drink? Was your top low cut? Was your skirt too short? Were you speaking too loudly? Were you flirting with people? Did you, as happens in rape investigations, you have to hand in your phone and they look through your history, your text messages, WhatsApp messages, Facebook, Twitter. If you've ever had a conversation about fancying somebody, wanting to sleep with somebody, that is brought up. So unless you are Mary Poppins and, you know, you had your children because you're the Virgin Mary, you, in the eye of the law and society, you're an imperfect victim. So then when you go from being the imperfect victim, how people view how you're going to heal also becomes very complex, because they already do not want to see what you being a victim is. So if they don't want to see that, how can you heal? They want it to be over very fast. And I understand, you know, it makes people uncomfortable, but at the same time, it's not a switch. You can't just wake up tomorrow and say, okay, it's over now. It doesn't happen like that, and we don't have a choice for it to happen like that, but people do. Like the past year, I have had people who I thought were friends who have said to me, oh, well, can't you just get yourself a therapist? And it's like, well, I do have a therapist, but I'm in a live criminal investigation at the moment, so there's a lot of things I'm not allowed to say to people. And then somehow that becomes about me, as opposed to actually, can we look at the systems that are in place that mean that we who end up experiencing these things end up being treated as though we're the perpetrators. We're the perpetrator of a crime that makes everybody else feel really uncomfortable because they're never in the room with the rapist, or so they feel, but then how many women are raped every single day? So pretty much all of us has had contact with somebody who we think is a friend who has at some stage. Yeah, sorry, I think I might have started going off again into it.
You're good.
Yeah, so I think it's really, people are uncomfortable. They don't want to look at it. They don't. So that view of how we heal, it's not conducive to us having the healing process that we could have or should have.
Yeah, thank you for that. Do either of you two want to respond?
It just making me think of how, in my experience anyway, healing is viewed as something that you do like by yourself, like alone, like over there with your therapist, but that's it. You know, and it made me think about like self-care. It's about us as individuals. That healing is our responsibility, but it's not. And yeah, we're all shaking our heads like no.
Collective care and mutual care is one of my biggest jams. Like, so important.
Yeah, exactly. And it made me think about a youth kind of event we had recently. So on the 20th of November is the International Trans Day of Remembrance, where worldwide we honor and remember trans people who've lost their lives from gender-based violence, sexual violence, murder and suicide. It's a heavy day, as you can imagine. It's a memorial service, essentially. And we realized that for our trans young people, we want to honor this, but also celebrate our communities as well. So we started to do our own youth-specific events for this day. And it was it was so much more than I thought it could be, and I think it was that place of healing because it was us together connecting, and just, you know, all our transgender non-conforming bodies in this room, and just being together when we were face to face, and we were lucky to do that. And one of my colleagues said, this is where individual resilience becomes collective resilience. And I was like, yes, and this is exactly what we need, and we need to feel it together. And I can't even explain it because it's all those unspoken things, those things you can't quite put into words. It's not, so it's, we so just need to be together as a collective.
Thank you, yeah, that's a brilliant point. And what you've all mentioned about collective healing being a huge part of this way forward instead of what's usually shown, which is the individual point A to B, which you mentioned, Tashmia, that just isn't the reality it's a myth, really, at the end of the day. Davina, I don't know if you want to
I just think on the back
of
that, it's also sometimes how your friends and family view you and how they think you should just get over it, especially the perpetrators within the family. There's this, well, speaking from my experience and just culturally, there's this expectation to be hushed, to be quiet, let's brush it underneath the carpet. And then you go to the police and it's like they're indirectly trying to tell you, hush, be quiet, because they're trying to pin some blame on you. So I think but I also think it's also a part of, at times, individuals not wanting to look inside. Because when someone maybe shares their experience, sometimes we have to stop. But still, I still feel there needs to be an element of where when we speak, we need to be seen and heard and acknowledged by those. Even if you have your opinions, that's fine. But I think sometimes we miss to take that time to hear people that have gone through sexual violence.
Thank you. That actually kind of perfectly leads on to a quick last question before we do open it out to the audience, which you've already briefly kind of just said, but if each of you has any thoughts or advice you think on what those around survivors can do to better support or understand their loved ones' process of healing.
I'm just, you know, when you're somewhere else, but you're here. I've just been in and out of dissociating on this panel. It's a good place to be doing that. I feel welcome to do that. Yeah, do you know what I mean? In and out, shake it all about. I just want to say, yeah, you know, it's because I'm trying to tune to a subtle energy here, which is that I'm so glad that this panel is full of black and brown human beings. That's a very visible thing that I am like touching on, but I'm not really touching. And you really helped me by saying cultural. I'm like, oh yeah, here we are, You know, there are so many I think solidarity cross-culturally is very important in terms of us as a human community, being able to find some healing, understanding, like I said in the beginning, the differences, the different obstacles that we have to battle with, the different obstacles of oppression, and understanding there's no hierarchy to that. That doesn't stop it being true. And how can we uplift and support each other with specificity of care, and knowing that is a right as well. It's not like, let me dash this here, let me dash that there, because you're a survivor, and increasing this feeling of like, there is a huge thing for being, I am living at many different intersects. Sometimes I'm a woman, sometimes I'm genderqueer, I'm definitely disabled, I'm also queer. And every one of these has felt like coming out to myself, and then having to understand this backlog of the world shit about me being myself. And so it then becomes, when an instance of specific trauma or harm or violence comes, it's like all of those communities somehow reject you. Or want to find a way to silence you specifically. And what I you know, just to share, it's been a journey to not silence myself. That is the mutual care thing. But if we're asking about what family and friends can do, is really, is to build their resilience,
that's a good one.
to be able to hold space. One of the biggest things that, I've got 2 phrases, like I like try to codify things to like understand what I'm doing here in this world. 2 phrases I've got is like, who guards the guards? I'm talking about the police and all oppressive carceral systems. And who heals the healers? Because as someone sort of forced and also guided to a path of healing and being a light bearer, it's fucking heavy holding faith that there is a better world. And like, it's really exhausting. You can say, you know, there is that resistance to calling yourself a healer or calling yourself an activist, because do you really want to be one, or do we just want to live? But yet the world is here and it needs serving. Like most people that have been called to a vocation, it doesn't really come the way you think it's it's, you know, that healing is labor. You've had to walk through shit and mud and build and the tar of this world. And it's not rolling your hands up, it's not a glamorous thing. And we need more help. And we also need rest. So if ever there's something that, you know, when you're like, I don't know what to do, it's like ask, or come here, or listen, or share, invite people to these spaces, because you always take that first step. We did, you know, took the first step up from the ground. And then that day when you end up back from the floor, you come back again. Some of us have survived suicide attempts and are still here and said, no, not death. Today I choose life. So being aware of the weight of the unseen that survivors carry, and any way you can share, like take some of that, share some of that weight, is like, it's not gonna come from a book, it's gonna come from your heart. Like, we know how to support each other. We know, the good old British, can I get you a cup of tea? It can feel like a nonsense, but it's the small things. Literally, when someone is drowning, that is like, you're trying. And especially in this age of disconnection, even more so with this COVID and all this whatnot, like, it's being courageous, like other people taking the leap of faith to be like, you can turn up as you are, like not being scared of a survivor. I found people sometimes look at me like I'm monstrous because they don't know how to deal with the stuff in my aura, like my trauma. It's like, that's not me, I'm a baby girl here. You know, I'm you. I am you. So it's like making that effort to see each other's light is a simple level that will allow us to grow together, I think.
Cool. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah. Cool. So now we're going to open it up to the audience. I'm afraid we don't have tons of time, so we'll only really be only able to take a couple of questions. I've also been asked to gently remind you that this session is just for questions only, but if you do want to share any of your personal stories, there is a sharing session at 4:30, so in half an hour, at the committee room. There is someone, I think, who has... You're right there. Hello, thank you. So if people want to raise their hand, we have just under 10 minutes now if someone wants to ask a question. Cool.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, your opinions and thoughts. I just want to ask, as listening to everything you're saying, I thought a lot about Audre Lorde saying radical self-care as political resistance. And I just want to know, what do you do for self-care? What do you like doing when you're not talking about your stories or...
Thank you. That was actually on my list of questions that I didn't have time to ask, so it's very helpful. So yeah, please go ahead. Whoever wants to take it first.
Okay, self-care. This is something I'm still learning. part of the process of my healing has been to learn that I probably give too much of myself, and I have been trying to learn how to hold some of that back for myself. Being a survivor of childhood abuse, there is an element of also self-parenting involved. So sometimes being patient with myself, not insisting that I have to be somewhere because society or the people around me tell me I have to be there. It's okay if today I get up, I brush my teeth and I shower, and then actually I'm not really able to do much more. It's okay. I got to that bit. Tomorrow's another day. I can do more then. And definitely, I think, in terms of my friends, tea and a biscuit is just, I can't even, it's going to be magic, right?
Yeah.
And you
Magic.
just sit, yeah. Especially if it's chocolate. But like, yeah, I personally have been doing a lot of painting over the past year, and that has helped me be in a different space with what I'm feeling and experiencing, to kind of explore those feelings, but it feels safe because it's in my space, it's on the canvas, there isn't anybody else involved. So yeah, that's been some of the ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I had to take it back to the inner child, the child in me. What does a child in me like to do? And for me, it's baking. Me, it's watching Marisha, if anyone's heard of that, Sister on Netflix, refilling and loving that little girl. Because at times, you can feel a part of your innocence. From my experience, part of your innocence is gone. And who are you? Sometimes you lose who you are. So having to find who I am as a child and just feed that part of me, because the adult me has to get on with life, there's bills to pay. But the child in me doesn't have that responsibility. So yeah, I think find the inner child inside of you.
Oh my God, when you asked that question, I was like, oh no, like, what am I doing for self-care? Like I'm being told off or something. But,
Drag.
yeah. But I think I think I've been thinking a lot more about like what does care look like for me recently, because I lost my dad last year. I was his caregiver, and maybe some of you can realize, but understand, that when you're a caregiver, you're caring so much for other people, and you also need care. Caregivers need care. So I'm still kind of figuring that out, and I realized that actually, I've been in therapy for ages. I write a lot. I have my journal. And I was like, why isn't this working? Why don't I feel better? This is self-care, right? I'm eating and cooking and all the things I like to do. But then I realized in this, in these kind of puddles and wells of grief that, I need so much more. I need the group support. I need to talk to my friends. I need to, go out dancing, and I need therapy, and I need writing, and I need all these other things. Like, I need everything. Like, self-care is everything. And hopefully one day everything I do will be care for myself. But it's not quite. And I think that kind of relates to something you said earlier, which made me realize that, we can't care for ourselves at 100% all of the time. Sometimes it will be, just about brushing our teeth, or sometimes it will be, you know what, I'm just going to lie in bed for a while, and it doesn't feel like caring, but actually I cannot do this 100% self-care all the time, so it's okay. And just like harm and violence and pain, it's on all these different levels. It's within us. It's between. It's relational. It's institutional. It's systemic. It's global. So our healing and self-care has to exist on all those other levels. Care has to be global. Care has to be collective. Care has to be individual. It has to be systemic as well. So yeah, it's a lot, but getting there.
Thank you. We do literally have 2 minutes, but if you just really quickly want to answer that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, it's okay,
Time
love.
to run.
So I allowing myself to transform and self-create. One of the big things that my repeated traumas has given me is quite a deep-rooted sense of unworthiness and self-hatred, and it's one, it's a very positive thing for me to be able to share that. as someone that is a source of abundance and warmth and love, like very pure source love for so many, truly give my heart to this world, I cannot feel it in my flesh form. So it's like that becomes my daily priority, is like to let myself breathe, to remember to breathe like all day, to be like, to start to like accept that knowledge, because that feels like to be honest with myself, if I can't be honest with myself and with you to that being a truth right now, how can I imagine letting it go or like becoming something else? I also have I spent 10 years really lost from any sort of faith or belief in a divine essence, because that felt like something that wasn't allowed, especially in this country as well. And I didn't feel any affinity with Christianity anymore, so I felt quite lost. Finding something beyond that meant something to me, believing that there is a soul within each being, regardless of whether they can feel it or have access to that. And an interconnectivity, that is a very indigenous belief, and that's where I'm from. I'm from the land, you know. I'm a Biafran woman from Igbo land, and that's something that I have lost, and I'm trying to reclaim the earth, like being supportive and having things that we need. That being said, like being able to walk, going into nature, all things that we're taken away from being in walls and concrete buildings. Like making things simple, saying one at a time. And like, I've got a little crystal here, for example, because I was feeling anxious about coming onto the panel, and I've got this like rose quartz balm. It's little things that can remind you that your breath is yours. It was taken at one point. That's why the phrase in the movement, I can't breathe, even in Black Lives Matter, it's like, it's the same like thing around our necks of oppression but these are my lungs. So on a basic day-to-day, if we can start like reclaiming our breath in each moment, that's been a big source of care for me.
Thank you so much. Just to let the audience know that there is support information on the back of the booklet if anyone needs that. And with that, we are only 1 minute over. So I want you all to join me in thanking our panellists for this session.
Thank you so much.